So I don't really have a name for this particular show yet, since I've never really done an interview type thing like this before. I have on Austin from Mythweaver AI.
Hey, glad to be here. Very happy to chat with you.
For those of you who are unaware of what it is, Mythweaver AI is effectively a form of a DM assistance tool. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, I think that's fair, at least in the vision of it. I think right now it's a little more of just kind of like content creation for DMs essentially. So, but an assistant in a way, though a lot of the features we plan on adding in the future will help kind of become more and more of a kind of real-time resource you can use, mid-campaign or mid-session rather, when things are happening and you have to all of a sudden deal with a giant narrative hole you totally didn't think of previously, and the players are asking questions about how this works, and you're trying to adapt on the fly or whatever. But yeah, for now, the main kind of focus as it is around content creation, characters, NPCs, of course, as well, kind of fit into that mold. We let you generate monsters and locations as well, so you can get that perfect, cool castle up in the mountains that you're looking for.
The first thing I'll ask about for anyone who's coming across this stream that hasn't heard about this before, one of the things that you kind of touted on like the website and Twitter and all that is you refer to this as an ethical AI. So
Yeah.
quick rundown.
Right now, we are in early access. So we did a Kickstarter in October of 2023. Yeah, and kind of grew our following and community there. And so now we're in early access, which is kind of like just like a pre-launch beta build that people are able to use and play with. And so that is kind of as it is. We are not currently in early access using licensed materials, right? We're just using kind of stock AI models, but kind of wrapping an app around all of the AI to kind of show the proof of concept. And then what we are working on right now and what will be in place for our public launch is that our AI models will be trained exclusively on licensed content from artists. And we're also creating an artist platform as well, where partner artists can come in and license their works to Mythweaver and then create their own model, right? So that you can get art that looks, exactly like art that a particular artist that you follow and like would create. And the artists then get commissions on images that are generated through that model. So what we end up doing there is empowering artists and creating an artist, revenue source and kind of new ways for them to make money and sustain what they're doing on generative AI. So we're working with a couple partner artists right now. We've got a number of conversations going. One artist is fully contracted with us. We have their licensed materials and we're training models on their work. And yeah, we're just looking for more. And that's kind of what the kind of quick spiel on our approach to generative AI and kind of how we can be, responsible players in this new crazy AI world.
And now, a lot of people who may be, again, seeing this stream randomly will notice I do not have an actual title card. What I put up on the screen is effectively one of the things I generated when I was playing around with the AI a little bit to kind of give people an example of what to expect. So the one I use is actually probably the favorite one I actually generated while I was playing around.
Yeah, lots of people are creating all sorts of fun, cool things, right? And the ability to do it quickly is appealing to people, I know.
The whole reason I actually came across this is me and one of my co-hosts, Mildred the Monk, when we were talking about a game called Steel and Steam. An issue we had was, while the system was great, there was so much talk about the dreamscape, but no actual imagery to show what we'd even see in that kind of game. And my co-host kind of just went, something like this would actually be a great use for AI art because of how weird some of the imagery it can be, which would perfectly fit in a dreamscape reality. This image certainly looks like something out of a dreamscape.
Yeah, that's actually like the contracted artists that we're working with right now. Our very first artist partner that I kind of mentioned earlier, that's kind of like one of their main focuses and specialties is like, yeah, it's very ethereal, dreamscapey, styles of image and whatnot. So we're excited to share more about their model here coming up. That'll be dropped in some marketing materials and press releases coming up shortly. But yeah, no, it fits right along that theme you're talking about. So that's kind of cool.
Now, how long has this project actually been in the works? Because again, like I've only come across it very recently. You appear to be muted at the moment.
I lost you for a quick second.
Since I only came across this project recently, like how long has Mythweaver actually been in development for?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so summer of 2023, I kind of started tinkering with the concept. My friends and I were in a D&D session, and we all got derailed talking about AI and pros and cons and all that fun stuff. And so afterwards, I went home and couldn't sleep for a while, kind of thinking about, do these concepts mesh? Does it fit? Is that a viable thing? Yeah. And so anyway, I kind of started in earnest in, I think, July. And then September, we started talking with people about it and kind of launched a really early prototype and let people tinker around with it and kind of grew our user base from there. And then we launched Kickstarter, and now here we are.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually surprised it only started back in July. This kind of looked like a project that'd been in the works for a bit longer than that.
Yeah, no. Overall, it's been relatively quick and easy to date, and yeah, it's pretty much just me as far as development wise, or at least it had been until very recently, and then we were able to bring on some extra help and partners there. So yeah, we are moving faster now development wise as well. So it'll be exciting as we launch the new features we're thinking of, and then also mobile app towards the end of the year. So yeah, lots of fun stuff coming. And
So just to ask, because again, it does seem like it's a lot farther along than I would have expected. How much of like were you involved with setting up the AI models, or did you start working with some other groups to kind of help speed this along a bit?
Yeah, good question. At the core of it, there's kind of two different models essentially, right? We've got essentially like a fine-tuned version of ChatGPT that generates all of the text inputs, right? Or text outputs, I suppose. So, when you're saying, I want let's do something non-fantasy. I want a female Jedi character that's this age and from this particular planet and blah, blah, blah. And then it generates a lot extra kind of background context and information around that based on that kind of core idea that you've presented it. So yeah, anyway, so that's all GPT under the hood as far as like the actual specific model there. We have fine-tuned it on extra data and information around, just kind of general fantasy tropes and sci-fi things and whatnot to kind of customize it a bit. And then as your campaign progresses, we feed everything that's happened in your campaign, all of your DM notes and kind of session recaps and campaign history and notes and all that, feed that into the model so they can recall all of that information as it generates new stuff for you. So anyway, that's kind of like roughly how the text side of the AI works. And then for images, there's kind of two phases of that right now. We're using kind of a core stable diffusion model. And then what we are working on right now with licensed artist works is basically a customized model on top of stable diffusion that incorporates those licensed works. And then on top of that, we will train artist-specific models that help you output art that looks like that particular artist did it. And then that ties back into the whole, artist model conversation we briefly talked about earlier, and royalties and all that fun stuff. But that's kind of the state of the AI and the models, and kind of really briefly how they work as is.
Now, it's been a bit since I've actually played around, since I've had a lot coming up. While I was, the features that I remember seeing were creating like actual NPC type characters, locations, and monsters.
Yeah, those are the kind of core strengths as it stands. Yep.
Now, I have kind of checked around your Discord a bit. I know people are asking for a bit more. Like in the near future, are there plans you have to like incorporate more things along those lines beyond just those aspects?
Yeah. I think there's a certain point too where there are many different conjuration types, as we call them, that they get more specialized, right? Because like locations, that's a really broad-based term and thing, right? Like that could mean a particular building. Some people interpret that to mean like a whole, region of their world, right? Or a whole world. And so the AI model ends up being a little bit more kind of it leans more towards assuming that these things are like discrete, smaller locations, like a building, right, or a castle, or some sort of structure-ish thing, right? And so as we go, yeah, I foresee us adding a whole ton of stuff. One of the biggest new one that people ask for right now is items. Generate, an image of your paladin's cool sword or what have you. And we have a really rough prototype of that, but yeah, basically long story short for that, we just need more licensed images that show a variety of these type of weapons and non-weapons, any type of item, right? In, a number of different art styles and whatnot. So that's something we're working on. One of the things we are also doing is like commissioning art pieces from our partner artists to flesh out the models further. So the more examples it sees of a great axe or a mace or whatever your thing you're trying to generate is, the better it's going to be able to generate that on its own. Anyway, so yeah, that's one of the major areas we're focused on in terms of kind of new conjuration types and all that. And then, yeah, I imagine there's going to be all sorts of things like that pop up as we go. But yeah, a lot of it, well, not a lot of it, a lot of what we are doing is and this is kind of broad based, is we're waiting for community feedback, and we obviously are listening to it, and then we're letting that kind of guide where we need to focus, right? Whatever the community is asking for the loudest are obviously things that we want to solve and deal with. So after we deal with items, we'll see what the next big pain point is or problem people want to solve, things they want to generate, and go from there and add more.
I'm half expecting one of those things is going to be people wanting to like be able to generate actual map layouts for locations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I said that items are the most requested. That might be true. I don't know. I'd have to look at the at the votes and data, but if not, that is either first, or the dungeon maps and whatnot are either the most voted for or a close second to items. So yeah, we actually we're speaking with a couple different dungeon map artists, trying to get them to license their stuff to us, because that's basically the main need we have there is like we need a specific dungeon map model to do that kind of thing. And so yeah, we're in conversations there trying to flesh that out as well. But yeah, absolutely.
Now, beyond just like your actual AR AI generation aspects, which I know that seems to cover most of what Mythweaver does. On site, it also like keeps track of aspects of a camp. This is something I had no real way or time to actually play around with. So what kind of stuff does your site actually help keep track of in terms of a campaign?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so like right now in early access, it's really pretty limited. At the moment, what you can do is, obviously you can create and manage a campaign. You can create sessions. So like as you and your players are playing, you can create a session to kind of containerize all the stuff that happened in that session and kind of remember what happened, right? So at the end of it, your DM can go in and type in kind of a recap of like, this is roughly what happened. And then the AI will run through, take all the data you've provided it, feed that back into generations of future content. But two, it'll generate a kind of summary for you, and it can email out to the players just so everybody has a copy of like, this is a summary of what happened in the session. This is the kind of full length recap that your DM provided. You can also upload audio now. So if you are playing online in some fashion and you are recording audio, you can upload that. So you guys always have that. And then a feature we're working on right now is transcription of that audio. So you can get a quick transcript that'll be searchable. That way, you can always jump back to any mentions of a particular, NPC or character or whatever, and kind of trace back through exactly what was happening, in that session with this character. And anyway, that's kind of like high level what we do and or will do shortly. Beyond that, we want to, I'd say medium term, over the next year plus, we want to start transitioning to an app where you can manage your entire campaign. It can be the information house, right? That's where you're storing information about the characters and NPCs and the world that you're building, right? And yeah, because the more context and information you can provide the AI, the better results you're going to get when generating, right? So you don't have to tell it all these things about your world when you're prompting it to build a particular NPC. It just already kind of knows these things off the bat, which allows it to create better things, right? Like this whole town, let's say, was destroyed, right? And so when you are generating a character, maybe it creates a backstory that they were from this town that was destroyed, and they've got this haunting backstory and kind of mental scars because of it, right? So there's lots of fun things we can do as we gather more information about your campaigns and your sessions and your players and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, we're also going to be doing a mobile app, and anyway, I could go on and on, of course, rattling things off, but I think those are kind of some of the higher level main ideas and features there.
I was actually going to ask if there was going to be a mobile app, because as great as this is so far that you can use it for like online games, doing this stuff from the PC would be a little weird for most like in-person games, depending on.
Yeah, exactly, right. We want this to be yeah, right. I mean, obviously depends on the the party and their setup and all that, but yeah, totally agree. That's one of the main things we want to solve for is being able to meet the players where they're playing and integrate well with their actual real world.
Now, I think we've covered like most like major aspects of it. We talked a little bit about what's coming. You yourself, like, how long have you actually like been into the whole tabletop gaming thing?
Yeah, so some buddies and I, many of whom are either helping with Mythweaver or lightly helping here and there as they have time, started playing in what was that? That might have been I think it was 2016. So overall, we were fairly kind of latecomers, I would say, to the whole scene. Just growing up, there was like I don't know, at least for me, there was kind of a stigma, if you will, rather. And it just felt like too nerdy. And so I was a little bit, I don't know, just dumb kid stuff, right? You're like, you just don't try it, and so you don't know how awesome it is. Of course, I played all sorts of other games, board games, video games, etc. And that wasn't nerdy, but tabletop games, that's where I drew the line for some reason. Anyway, I dove in and of course was instantly obsessed, and we actually started out with Dungeon World as our system. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's like basically just freeform role playing. There's very little rules. It's pretty much just up to the DM's discretion to decide, whether or not something is likely to happen or not. And anyway, so we started with that and had a lot of fun, and then said, all right, we got to dive into a real system. So we started with 5e and went from there. And yeah, honestly, for the main campaign we play right now is 5e, but we're talking about trying out some Pathfinder here, and we'll see how that works. We're also talking about starting up a Mythweaver team campaign, which will be fun and interesting. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of where it all started for me, and then just, yeah.
Now, a bit more about Mythweaver itself. I did see a lot of people asking for like possible updates to kind of help the AI set up like stat blocks for stuff it's generated. That's something I'm not going to expect it to be able to do for every system out there, because there is so many. But even for like the most common ones, is that something you guys have been looking into trying down the line?
Yep. That's something that our Kickstarter backers unlocked, actually. So at least for 5e and Pathfinder, I don't know much about Pathfinder, honestly. But yeah, anyway, yes, that's something we're going to be doing here in really pretty shortly. I think in I can't remember exactly. I think it's April, May, June, somewhere in that time frame is when we're expected to launch that. So yeah, we'll start integrating things like that. And the nice thing too, just to touch on your point about supporting 800 million different systems, is Mythweaver is open source. We haven't touched on that yet, but that is one area where build out this ecosystem now, where a player who really wants support for Shadowrun or whatever, right, now can, obviously, if they're programmatically inclined, can, help contribute to Mythweaver and add support for that. And, we just block it on into the system, and there we go. And now you have, kind of community enhancements that are helping improve Mythweaver, but also, people don't have to wait on, the Mythweaver team's capacity to build out some of these things, particularly for more, well, I don't want to say less popular, but I mean, relatively compared to D&D, less popular systems and things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually realize your system was open source at all until just now. Have you had a lot of people already trying to like develop their own stuff for it, or is it still just a little closed off since you're in early access?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we haven't frankly had a whole lot of community contributions yet, a couple here and there. But yeah, generally, and largely just because, frankly, we're not super ready for any large scale number of people trying to contribute to Mythweaver quite yet, just, organizationally, as we're still so new and everything. But yeah, anyway, so that's kind of the state right now. As we get into, yeah, kind of our full release, public launch and all that, I'm sure we will, yeah, we'll start getting more geared up. A lot of it just comes down to how do we enable people to actually effectively build on Mythweaver and, and extend it to do whatever, cool thing they're trying to add to it. So, yeah, anyway, just to recap, I guess, because that was a lot of words. Not a whole lot right now. It is certainly possible, but yeah, there's a limited movement there just because of how early we are. But yeah, making that easier for people to help contribute and all that going forward.
I mean, if any other just like popular open source stuff will tell you that there'll be people there. You already see all kinds
Right.
of stuff that people will try to make and help other systems, even ones that aren't huge. I think if this
Yep.
project starts to actually get really big, you're gonna see a lot of people, if it's open source, just monkeying around with it to see what they can do.
Right, exactly. That's the beauty and fun of open source, right? You got all sorts of people contributing together, doing crazy stuff you never thought of, and tweaking it into whole new applications that surprise everyone, really. So yeah, no, it's going to be great. We're excited for that possibility.
That actually does make me a little interested because if you've seen a lot of different gaming systems, you'll notice a lot of them don't really give you guidelines for creating monsters. But then you get some games like Anima Beyond Fantasy, which has such a detailed guide for creating your own stuff to send at your players. I'm kind of
Yeah,
wondering
it's
how much that'll affect what's actually getting made, or how much easier that's going to make it for some games.
yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I think there's yeah, right. Some systems are going to be easier to do some of those kinds of things than others, and yeah, I mean, it just totally depends on what actual logical rules does the system have to help, with those kinds of things and help enforce it and all that. And, some of them are going to be more open-ended and yeah, you might just end up with more open-ended results. But yeah, that's where we just got to fine tune and go from there. And, that's again where the huge, the community feedback and input and help if you're able to do such a thing, and in the open source aspect, the ability to go in and propose a tweak to the system because like these monsters are way too powerful based on the challenge rating I provide or whatever, right? Like you'll be able to tweak it.
I mean, to be fair, some systems have a problem with that even when it's all done in-house.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yep. Yeah, I mean that's that's the really cool thing I think about role playing and then kind of how Mythweaver works with it is like at the end of the day, all of this stuff is subject to the DM's review and input and modifications and whatever, right? So it's not like sure, it can come up with something crazy that doesn't make sense as far as a stat block, but like you can still use that core concept and image and not to come up with a viable monster.
Well, I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is, especially for a mobile app and like a table game with real people, is that infamous moment when someone asks for a character name. And
Yes, right.
I had one time, this one of my players looked over to just a random barbarian that they just left alive to ask for questioning. Just, what is your name, warrior? As soon as I stopped, like everyone at the table just stopped and all turned to look at me because like, you have no idea, do you?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, that was actually like the core of the original idea was like, how can I super quickly like generate something or grab something off the shelf so that, when my players are like, what's the innkeeper's name? And to this inn you never plan on them going to. And you're like, if you can just, have your Mythweaver app open or whatever and click a button or three and then kablam, there, you have something. I mean, who knows if you actually generated a character that actually is an innkeeper, right? But at least you have a name of something, or you can scroll through the gallery and get ideas of things, right? Just the ability to quickly be able to on the fly react to crazy shit your players throw at you is a nice thing to have.
No, I just have a couple last questions. One, like, for anything that hasn't been announced or just people haven't been clamming for, is there anything that you just kind of want to eventually include in Mythweaver that hasn't really been brought up yet?
Yeah, about 8,000 things, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's like a long-term dream for me of there are things like D&D Beyond and other tools that are closed source, proprietary things that only support one system and are frankly kind of janky in terms of the license restrictions and all the things you have to do to use them, whether or not you necessarily even want to use all of the content of that particular module or whatever. And I think that Mythweaver can be a place where, yeah, I mean, that's like your hub for your games, regardless of system, right? That's the nice, powerful benefit of the open source stuff, right? Again, we can support all sorts of systems as, the community grows and builds support for these things. And yeah, I think it can be a one-stop shop for your campaigns, right? The DM can invite his players or her players, their players, they can create their campaigns, they can track their sessions, they can create and plan the content that they're planning on, bringing up with the players. They can easily share the content as it becomes appropriate, right? Like, maybe you just start with an image, but, at a certain point you start to share more about that character, based on information that's been relayed in campaign or in session. And, players then can see all this information. They have, note-taking abilities in there. They can see the maps that are generated. We can keep track of the world and where the towns are on the map and, what players are in what portion of the map. That's a D&D Beyond feature they just released that I'm sad they did because I was excited to build that first. Yeah, I mean, again, just kind of a one-stop shop for your campaign that keeps track of all this digitally. Pen and paper is great, right? Like in a lot of ways, I like pen and paper. But sometimes you can't beat the digital recall and searchability of, the ability to, you guys have been playing for 10 years and had, dozens, maybe hundreds of sessions, and you're trying to remember that thing that happened, searching through, obviously, depending on how much of a note taker you are, all these, hundreds of pages potentially of notes across 10 years, like that's a pain in the butt. But if I can search and find like, oh yeah, that was this character, and then it can kind of log and track everything that happened with the character, what their status is. Are they dead currently? Are they still alive? Like what happened to this person or character or whatever it is, right? And yeah, just the ability to keep track of everything, to generate new stuff, to get helpful AI suggestions and hints, both as a DM and as a player. I think it's going to be really powerful, and I'm excited to continue down that path.
And the other thing, just since there is a degree of like running campaigns via Mythweaver AI, however limited the fashion is right now, down the line do you see it eventually like almost becoming its own form of like virtual tabletop where you can actually just play the games through here? That would be a very long way off, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as far as everything I know right now, yeah, that's exactly what I would love to do. Now, yeah, as you mentioned, that's a complicated endeavor. We may well be partnering with other virtual tabletop providers, in the short and medium term to kind of extend Mythweaver's capabilities into a virtual tabletop and integrating with a Roll20 or what have you. Obviously, there's a gajillion different systems and things there, but Anyway, I think long term though, to answer the root of your question, I would love to. I really, really believe in a integrated tool that you don't have to jump between 18 different things to create your content, to track it and manage it and build your worlds. I think there's no reason you can't do it all in one.
Well, I'll say I am looking forward to see what comes of this. It was actually very nice to learn it's open source.
Yeah, well, thanks for chatting with me. I've had a lot of fun here, and always nice to talk, hear their thoughts, questions, and makes you think more about what we're doing. And yeah, just very excited to be here and talk with you. So thanks for having me.
Not a problem, man. For everyone else, tune in later tonight over on Milder's channel where we're talking about. I completely forgot what game we're going to be talking about tonight. Shattered. But yeah, it was fun having you on.
And all right, thanks so much. Talk to you later.
Later.